I became aware of the Constitution through my education. I think beginning as a relatively young child, I always had a strong interest in history and in government. And of course, the more you read about American history, the Constitution is so fundamental to everything that's happened in American history. And of course, if you go back to the creation of the country, it is the absolute vital document. But if you look at the way the Constitution has evolved as it's been amended through the years, it tells the story of the growth of our country and the way our country has changed. The Constitution was amended after the Civil War to have the amendments that abolished slavery, gave African Americans the right to vote and to be citizens. It's been amended to give the vote to women. It's a document that has changed with the times, but it has basically always reflected this idea that we are a representative government, that the citizens have a right to vote, the citizens have a right to form and help create their government, and that the government is restricted in terms of interfering with the liberties of the people. And so as part of my education and my interest in history, the Constitution is just a constant presence in American history. In my career, I'm a lawyer, and so obviously the Constitution as sort of the fundamental law of the country has come up a lot in my work. I spent a good portion of my early years as a lawyer, as a public defender, which means I defended poor people who were accused of crimes. And the Constitution, guarantees a right to trial by jury and guarantees other rights of citizens that come into play frequently. In my political career, the relationship between the federal government and the state is vital. The separation of powers, the difference between the executive and the legislative branch and the judiciary is also vital. When I think of it, I always think of it as being the document that creates our government and sets up the organization of our government with an executive branch, a legislative branch, and a judiciary. And it creates the rights of the people, largely through representative government, but also sets up a system of federalism where you have states and you have a federal government, which is one of the most original and I think interesting things about our Constitution, particularly in the amendments, including, of course, the Bill of Rights. It sets forth the rights of the people, and most importantly, it restricts what government can do. It says Congress shall pass no law abridging the right to speech, the right to the free practice of religion or assembly or petitioning the government. Those things are such a core part of what our nation is about that I think the Constitution is probably the most important document that any citizen or any person in the world could read and try to develop an understanding of. When you stop and think about the Constitution and you stop and think about Constitution Day, which is September 17th, 9/17, what you're celebrating is our liberties, our form of government, the fact that we have this document that has worked very well over time, and that we have created a nation based on laws. And I think it's important, because I'm a big believer in education, that young people understand what's in the document and understand how it is so important in their own lives. And that needs to start early. I think it's, reading and studying history or reading the newspaper and being informed about current events and understanding how the government works is one of those things that builds on itself. Once you start and you stick with it, you get better and better at it, and your understanding gets deeper and deeper. It's sort of like athletes. The more you work at it and do it, the better you get. The more you pay attention to what's going on, the more you understand the way government actually works, the more you understand what your rights are, the better off you're going to be too. The reason that young people should be interested in the Constitution is it is part of our history. It is part of the creation of our country, and it really plays a key role throughout the history of the country. But it is a document that plays a role every day in every American's life. The government, the federal government, has an enormous effect on all citizens, and we all benefit from the restrictions that the Constitution places upon the government. And so any day, if you pick up a newspaper, there's going to be news stories of constitutional significance. When people protest, when people want to speak out on an issue, when people want to have a press that is active and bringing the news to them and is not being interfered with by the government, that all goes back to the Constitution. And we look at the disputes that might take place between the president and take place with the Congress. The Constitution sets out what the powers are of each branch of government, and so that's absolutely essential. And I would say to the students that, you know, the Constitution and the book that you all prepared, the 917 Society, I think so generously and wisely prepared. I mean, unlike a lot of constitutions and other important documents that you should look at over time, this one, the most important one, isn't all that long. If you think of when they were trying to do the European Union and have a vote on a constitution for that, the Constitution for that was probably inches thick, if not more. And this document could be read over a short period of time, and you can constantly refer back to different sections of it. And it is a document that is, I think, easy to understand and easy to get access to. I think one of the most moving ceremonies that I was able to participate in several times when I was mayor was the citizenship process and having people actually become citizens in a process that took place in federal court where they take an oath. And all of these people who were in part of this ceremony had spent time actually studying the Constitution. And they were folks who moved to the United States, who wanted to become citizens of our country, and they spent the time to learn about it, and they were excited about it. And they wanted to be here, I think, in large part because of the Constitution, because we are a country of laws, because we are a country that restricts government interference with liberty and allows people to pursue their dreams and achieve whatever they can achieve. You know, lots of countries, countries that may have very undemocratic, totalitarian governments now and in the past, have had constitutions that talk about freedoms, that talk about democracy, that talk about rights. But those rights are artificial, they're never protected, and they're not practiced. The difference here is that we, because we believe in this document, because we have courts, because we have a separation of powers where each part of the government is sort of looking after the other, we have a constitution that actually works, that actually does protect our rights. And it's not perfect, and there are times when things don't go right, but it is, the best form, as Churchill said, the best form of government, democracy, that we can have. And it is really moving to see new citizens, state their love for the Constitution and the theories that have established our country.